so now I have these two plants, plant 1 and plant 2. And let's go ahead and generate another form, maybe in plant 2. Let's add a flower to this plant. So I'm going to do this, I'm actually going to generate this in another geometry context. I'm going to hit Geometry tab, and this is just, again, a blank SOP context here. Let's unflag this. Well, we'll leave this one flagged, actually. Well, let's unflag it. So we'll dive into here. I'm going to actually rename this one flower. And so I'm going to generate a form actually now in Houdini rather than just importing models that I've created in Maya. So let's generate a stem. And I'm going to do that by starting with a line. And there's my line. It's really tiny. And then I'm going to use a transform node for this line. And let's make that line bigger. And this line right now has only 2 points. 1 and 2, 0 and 1 rather. So let's use a resample. I'm going to type resample. This will add more points to our line. Now I have over this length, so I am going to change this to every 1. I'm going to generate a new point. And now I'm going to use a point jitter. So this is a point jitter will change the position in a randomized fashion of all of these points. Right, here's my points. Turn off the numeric values associated with these points. Let's turn on this point jitter, and now I have this nice kind of variable kind of stem. I'm going to go ahead and change this to every 3 or maybe every 2. And then the point jitter, I can change the scale. So, and then I also have this seed value. So what does this, what is the form here, and change the form really easily by changing the seed. The seed, again, is that like random value and what is generated from that random value. Okay, so now I'm going to add what's called a polywire. Polywire node will allow us to kind of extrude along this line. And then I'm going to add, and with a polywire I can add different, how many, let's look at the top of this. So how many divisions do I want? Maybe 8's nice kind of round. And then let's add a smooth node to smooth out my stem. Now I can also add a bend deformer in Houdini as well. So let's say we want the capture direction here to be in the Y, I think. So that's I'm gonna add a 1 there, and then I can kind of bend this a little bit, and then change the capture length. So this just adds a little bit of a curve or bend to the stem. Okay, I can go back through my node network again for the point jitter maybe, and increase the scale of that point jitter. Something like this. All right, so now what I'll do is let's add a group. Node here to the end, and this group, let's see within, let's look at the point numbers here. Let's turn off, let's take a peek. It's hard to kind of see then what the numbers are, what those points numbers are. So we'll use again this kind of bounding box, and we're going to disable that. And I think it's giving me, yeah, my bounding box is way down here. The other thing too is I might want to add a group. I think, yes, I need to add a group before the point jitter. And so the reason is because with this point jitter, it's also changing the position here of this 0 point, this point here at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down. I'm going to add another group node. so that I'm going to maintain the center point of my stem at the origin. So I'm going to essentially disclude this one 0 point. So, right, this one's labeled 0. So under this group, I'm going to name this stem origin. And then I'm going to say everything that's not exclamation point 0. So now if I go to my group node, and let's go to points here. There's no primitives in a line, there's only points. So now everything that's not 0, if I bypass this or go back to my resample, if I go back to my group and disable this, well, let's see, right? So everything's selected here, and then everything's going to have the point jitter. But if I go ahead and say not 0.0, I want to maintain 0.0 at the origin, and then go to my point jitter node, flag this, and then choose the stem origin group, right? And so now no matter what my point jitter is doing, it's going to keep that first point in the center of the scene. Okay, so let's go back here, and we still have a bit, still something has moved the whole thing up, maybe the smooth, yeah. So let's say for polywire as well, let's add another group node. Let's say group. Let's add that here. And this group, we will use the bounding boxes because there's a lot of points with a lot of different values here, and I can't read it. So we're going to say in this bounding box region, and let's make the size of this 10, and let's move it up 5. And now let's turn off this primitives. And the size also, we're going to increase this by 5 and by 5. And now I'm going to say stem. I'm just going to name this one stem. And then under smooth, we're just going to apply this to stem. So now I have that origin is maintained. Now with the bend added. So these are just all different ways, and we can, make different versions of this depending on whatever those parameters are going to be. Okay, so now let's go to this line again. We're going to go to line and go to transform of the line, resample, group, point jitter, let's see polywire, and let's see smooth. Okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do with this third group here is I want to identify just the top region of this stem. And so I'm going to move this. I'm actually going to, in this case, let's go to our primitive numbers. I'm really going to have to zoom in on this to see what they're labeled. And what I want to do is select this top face here, which is 33. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky if we change anything else about the, let's see if this maintains, this will stay 33 if we go and change something about our point jitter. It still stays number 33, so I think we're good to use this method. Sometimes the numbering of the primitives, depending on if you're adding more or repositioning it, could change these values. But with this group, I basically want to identify the top of my stem so then I can create a flower on the top of my stem. So I'm going to say for this group, top of stem, and I'm going to disable bounding box and say I want this to be group 33, and now I have here this primitive. Now what I want to do is I'm going to say scatter, and I'm going to scatter a single point in this case. Let's go to my scatter node. Now this is a little bit different than the scatter in a line, but we're just going to use a scatter and just scatter 1. And we want to choose top of stem as our group. So now I just have 1 point at the top of my stem that I'm going to generate a flower on. So now let's generate the flower. Okay, so let's hit file, or let's hit tab and generate a file node. And here under file, I'm going to bring in my petal. And let's flag this petal. Let's turn off all of these visualizations here. So I have my petal. And let's go ahead and generate maybe with a sphere. And in this case, I'm not going to scatter points on my sphere. I'm going to scatter, I'm going to just copy to points. Let's see if this is how this is going to work. Let's just copy, not a copy node. We want a copy to points node again. Copy to points. And let's copy all of these petals onto this sphere. And now we have a kind of, looks a bit like a rose, but very complicated. So we can go back to my sphere and I can change the values, how many columns and rows we have here. And then I might also want to use a group node to identify the top of this. I'm going to want to put a transform node in as well under this file node so I can change the scale of this petal so I can really see what's happening here. And under my copy to points, this is transform using target point origins. Okay, and so under this transform node 2, I'm going to want to rotate, and I don't know which direction, so let's just see. Once I start to add 90 degrees, I want to rotate these petals a bit so that they are generating, yeah, like that from the center. And so I think just in the Y direction. Now I have these petals kind of generating from this tip of this point out in, and they're following, the Y is following the normal in this way. So let's also here, I'm going to increase the size. And then make sure I'm copying to the group. Let's make a group for points so that I can then copy to points and to copy, and then flag copy to points, and the source group is still not showing up here. Target points here to copy. Okay. All right. So I have something that kind of looks a bit like a flower. However, I think I might want to change the way that I'm orienting this bounding box so that I am generating something that where the petals are going the right direction. I don't know. Let's see what happens if I change this back to 0 and change the center here to 0.5, or in the Z to -0.5. And I like the way that's looking. I might even go back to my sphere and increase, let's see, the number of rows and the number of columns. So that's starting to look a bit like the right kind of shape for some kind of flower. And now what I can do is I'm just going to take all of these nodes, copy and paste them, and then add a transform and just rotate with the transform. And I'm going to rotate in the, yeah, again, not 100% sure which way I'm rotating. 180 and then maybe 180 in the Y. And now let's add a merge. And adding a merge node will allow me to link up both of these pieces of geometry. I'm also going to go here and shift this up. I'm going to translate this up so that these two kind of centers are going to overlap. Let's move this up, and this is not procedural, the way I'm kind of generating this, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to plug in numeric values. All right, let's say something like that now is going to be my flower. It's like a dahlia. And now at the end of this, I'm also going to give a transform node. And let's rotate this as well around the, again, I think I'm rotating it around the X, rotate around the X90. Okay. Okay, so now let's again add another null. That's not a null, let's add a null. And we're going to call this out so we know that this is the end of this node chain or SOP network. And now I have my flower. So I'm going to go back to plant 2, right? Plant 2. No, it wasn't. It was in flower. I have two node networks in flower that have not been linked up yet. I have my stem, right, which ends here, and I have my flower, which ends there. The bend, I think because I have an extra part of this volume selected under the group. So let's move this up. Let's move the center up to 6. That's better. So now I have the bend, have the group, and then I have that scatter point right at the top. So now let's do a copy to points. Again, copy to points. Copy to points. And we are going to copy to that one scatter node. And we don't need an out here. We're to this transform. And let's see. Now I have my flower at the top. And now I'm going to merge them together. I'm going to merge, use a merge node to merge my copy to points and my stem together. And now I have my flower stem, my flower and my stem. And now I can put my out. So now I'll put the null in. Let's link this up. Let's name this out and flag. Okay, so now I have my flowers complete. So now I'm going to go back to plant here, and I can bring in with an object merge node an object that is outside of this context. And again, that's going to be flower. And I'm going to hit accept. So what I've done is added an object merge node. And then under object 1, this is the object. You can actually merge in a number of objects. I'm going to choose flower and hit accept. And so now my flower is also in the scene. And I can then say another merge node. Let's add another merge node and merge both my flower and we are not going to merge from here. I'm actually going to disconnect these nodes. This file and out here, this is separate from generating this scene in Houdini. So this was the way to export out my forms, but in this case I just want to visualize these two together, the plant with its flower. And let's add another transform node right here. And let's increase the size of this uniform scale, maybe by 3. Okay, and there is my plant.